Welcome back to Stuff No One Told Us About Weight Loss. My name is Eloise and I'm here with Aaron, and this is part 2 of our previous episode of the 10 things that we wish that someone had told us earlier about weight loss.
This being part 2, if you haven't already gone and listened to part 1, go back now, pause this right now, go and listen to part 1 first, because it will kind of tie into what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. So today we're going to be going from points 6 through to 10. In the last episode, we went from points 1 to 5. So this episode is going to carry on where we left off from last time.
So I hope you enjoy. So the 6th thing that we wish that someone had told us earlier was to go faster and to get better results, simplify instead of complicating the process. Weight loss does not need to be complicated, but I think that so many people think it does.
Yeah, we all like to try to do all these different tactics and stack them on top of one another. I've heard of people who are doing little challenges, and they've got to eat on certain times and they've got to eat certain things, and they're listing out all these things and telling me this, and I'm like, man, that sounds so complicated. And they're like, yeah, it is, but it's going to happen really quick. And I'm like, that's just the wrong way of looking at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same thing with counting calories and having all these specific rules and protocols for all these different situations. It always comes down to the simple things. And once again, this is a lesson that I really learned the hard way when it comes to losing weight, because I had this belief that it can't be that simple.
Yeah.
I haven't been getting results. It can't be that simple. There must be this whole alternate universe where weight loss happens that I don't know about.
Yeah.
I always thought they must be doing all of these crazy things. And it's no, they were just implementing the basics. The people who simplify and the people who go back to the basic habits and learn how to get really, really good at those basic habits are the ones who see success and get to keep it.
Yeah.
It's the people who try to complicate it all the time, and the people who are constantly looking for the next thing or the better thing, they're the ones who never see the results.
Yeah.
And again, I was one of those people. I was constantly thinking that it couldn't be this simple and it had to be something different. And I was never seeing results when I thought like that. And when you look at it, the people who do have results, when you actually look at what they do every day, it is simple.
That's right. Well, it's the classic case of why they make it look easy, right? There's no doubt people that you've looked at and you go oh, weight loss is just easy for them. They're just naturally fit and in shape. And it's well, not really. They're just focusing on some simple things that they do every day. Whether they do it consciously or not, they might have habits that to some people might be something so foreign to them. But to them, it's just something that they do every single day.
Yeah. And that's just the process of building a habit, which is something we can all do.
Yeah.
Again, it's not they're not born with these habits. They formed them over time, which is what we can all do as well.
So number 7 thing that we wish someone had have told us about weight loss is that your self-talk has more of an influence on your results than you think.
Yeah. And I think that self-talk, a lot of people don't think about the way we speak to ourselves in relation to losing weight. And the biggest thing that I've learned is that your self-talk literally will make or break your results. You cannot lose weight and keep it off while enjoying your life if you speak to yourself in a shitty way.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah. You literally want to form a good relationship with yourself.
Yes.
At the end of the day, imagine you're talking to a friend. Half of the stuff you're telling yourself every day, you wouldn't dare say to a friend.
Or to anyone. You probably wouldn't even say it to your worst enemy.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. Some of that shit that's going on in there is really, really bad. And we think that if we speak to ourselves like that and if we beat ourselves up, maybe we'll get ourselves to do what we want ourselves to do.
Yeah.
But it's that is really backwards logic, and I'm speaking to you guys, but I'm also speaking to myself because this is something, of course, that I've dealt with. This is a lesson that we've learned. I spent years speaking to myself in a bad way, putting myself down, telling myself I'm not good enough, whatever it is, and then expecting myself to do things I want to do, or like wondering why I can never seem to get results, or I can never seem to do what I want to do. It's like, well, no shit. You constantly beat yourself up. Like, why would you then follow through and do things?
Yeah.
You know, it's really backwards, but it's very common. Like, we're all brought up a certain way and we learn these like coping mechanisms, which is often that negative self-talk. And we just think that that's normal. Like, we just that becomes our everyday thing. And we don't actually realize that it's possible to change that script.
Yeah, that's right. And when we have that sort of negative bias and that negative self-talk going on, we often create personality traits that lead us to take certain actions. So we start to become more impatient, and we start to look for really shortcut methods of losing weight, of getting in shape. And we really start to just grow more and more impatient, more and more like reactive with ourselves. And the good news is that you can change that.
Yeah. So basically, if you have shitty self-talk, you're much more likely to hate the process of losing weight and feel like it's really hard. You're also more likely to then, as a result, look for these shortcuts to just get it over with, just lose the weight as fast as possible. And then you're also more likely to quit when things don't go perfectly, because, you know, your brain feels like see, you found proof that you're a failure.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like what we've spoken about before is like your brain finds the proof it needs to make your thoughts be the truth. So if you're constantly thinking, I'm going to mess this up, I'm not going to see results, you know, this doesn't work for me, then your brain is going to constantly be looking around for bits of proof to prove yourself correct, to prove that you're a failure, to prove it doesn't work. And you will find what you're looking for. Trust me on that, because I have found all of it. So when you then flip that and you start speaking to yourself like you're a friend, speaking to yourself in a way that is constructive, you're going to find that you actually start doing things for yourself. You start showing up for yourself because your brain knows that, oh, okay, when I start taking positive actions, I actually speak to myself in a better way, and your brain is going to look for that. And then if you're telling yourself, wow, you're doing really great, look at you showing up for yourself, like, look how great it is that you did all these small things today, your brain will start noticing those small things, and it's going to start noticing small bits of progress here and there that we never realized before, we never noticed before when we're talking to ourselves like shit.
Yeah.
And that's how you stick to the plan, right? When you feel like, oh, this is actually working, you don't need to quit because it's working and it feels good. So bottom line, when you're kind to yourself and when you're patient with yourself and allow yourself to notice small wins, you're going to be much more likely to actually do the things you need to do, even when it's difficult and even when it feels hard, so that you can then see the results that you want to see. That's the power of self-talk. So thing number 8 that we wish that someone had told us earlier is that self-trust and confidence is built by keeping the promises that you make to yourself.
No matter how small they are.
Yeah.
It can start with a really, really small promise that you make to yourself, you know.
Get out of bed on time.
That's right. You know, I'm going to go to bed at this time.
Yeah.
And sticking to your word. Because at the end of the day, like, as we've said before in this podcast and other episodes as well, our brain gets really good at doing something over and over and over again. So if we get really good at not following through with what we say we're going to do, our brain learns like, hey, when you say I'm going to get up at 6:30 in the morning, I know that we'll just hit snooze and we'll just keep sleeping.
Yeah,
like,
it's like, oh, you don't really mean that. Good joke.
Yeah.
Good joke, old mate.
It learns not to trust you. But if you...
Well, you start not trusting yourself.
Yeah, well, that's right. And over time, like every time you say you're going to do something, then like subconsciously you're believing, well, I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you let yourself off the hook. Exactly.
And usually then what happens is you have no trust with yourself and you have a real lack of confidence, because you're not, like, confidence is built through competence. And so you're proving to yourself over and over again when you don't keep the promises you make that you're not competent at following through. So it's impossible to have confidence in yourself. Whereas when you follow through and you prove to yourself that you can make plans and stick to them, and you prove to yourself that you're following through and you're doing all this stuff and you're showing up for yourself, that is building competence, which then creates that self-confidence, and you start to trust yourself and your own abilities. And that is the only place to lose weight from. Because again, and I think I said this before, is that the only reason we lose weight is so that we can create a better life for ourselves.
Yeah.
Where we feel confident and where we enjoy our life. And so you can't pick the weight loss and say, well, I'm not going to do the other thing. You can't have one without the other.
You don't just lose weight and magically all of a sudden become confident, become this completely different person. That's not how it works.
Yeah. And I mean, I can attest to the fact that I've been very small and not confident. Being small and being thin does not make you confident. And I think a lot of us falsely believe that will happen, and it just won't. And that's why we really focus so much on doing all of the work to improve your life now, so that when you do lose that weight, you're going to have the life that you want.
Yeah.
But you have to do all this work along the way. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
And it also means that you're not really looking for the weight loss as a Hail Mary to improve your life. You've improved your life, and more importantly, you've improved the relationship with yourself, which then brings about as a bonus that you lose weight and you're able to keep it off, because that's the foundation bit underneath it. If we're trying to just go straight for the weight loss, irrespective of thoughts and irrespective of how we talk to ourselves, you're going to be forever on that cycle of chasing weight loss and then gain it back, and then chasing weight loss and then gaining it back.
Not to mention,
that's the cycle.
You're probably going to be stuck in this place where you don't enjoy your life. No matter how much weight you lose, you're always going to be constantly feeling like there's something missing, because there is. You're speaking to yourself like shit, you're thinking shitty thoughts, and that happens in our brain. So it doesn't matter how much you weigh. So building self-trust and building that self-confidence along the way is a massive part of our process. The way we do this is through creating food plans for ourselves and then following through on those plans that we make, writing things in our journal, setting goals for ourselves and following through on those things. And it's not about setting these massive things or writing these really restrictive plans, because that's setting yourself up for not following through. If you can practice on following through on really easy plans and really easy tiny little habits, what happens is it becomes a compounding effect. You start to see exponential growth where you do these tiny things, and then over time those things become bigger and they compound and they become really big things that really create results. And I think that is such an important thing to be able to do, to set yourself goals that you're then going to follow through on. And just writing out what you're going to eat for the day and then actually eating it is such a simple thing to do that has such a profound impact.
Number 9 of things that we wish someone had told us was that exercise is a tool. You literally cannot outrun a bad diet. Okay, and it's funny because we took a photo the other day for our social media and we were trying to depict this, and it was actually funny to do, but it's so true that a lot of the fitness industry as a whole tend to lean towards exercise. If you want to lose weight, you have to exercise and you have to do HIIT training, and because it's more time efficient and it's going to burn more calories. We get sucked into the vortex of believing that that's going to be the savior.
Yeah.
But it's a tool in the toolbox. It's not the Hail Mary approach that's going to come in and save you.
Yeah. And I think that one thing to mention is that you've probably heard some form of this, you can't run away from bad eating habits before. But most people speak about this in terms of you can't outrun a shitty diet, meaning the types of foods you eat. You might have seen that before. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the type of food you eat. We're talking about your eating habits. So you can't out-exercise the fact that you still eat when you're not hungry.
Yeah.
You can't out-exercise the fact that you still eat past satisfied. You can't out-exercise the fact that you still eat really fast and you're not working on your thoughts around food.
That's right. And that's exactly right. When we say the eating habits, that's what we're talking about. It has nothing to do with whether you're eating vegetables or you're eating pasta or stuff like that. Like, that's not what we're saying. It's, as I always said, like eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're satisfied. Like the real fundamental things. If you're not adhering to those things, it doesn't matter how much exercise you do, because those things will just keep you in the same position.
Exactly. Exercise and working out is fantastic for general health and for mindset and feeling good in our life. Like, we are 100% pro exercise, but what we're speaking about is in terms of weight loss. Like, exercise is not the number one thing to work on for weight loss. It's not the focus, because focusing on exercise, and we have a whole podcast on this, episode 3. Focusing on exercise takes our focus away from the eating habits. More important for your results, and the thing that most of us avoid working on, and that's why we don't see those long-term results that we're looking for. So we really encourage you to put the work in now to get your eating habits right. Stop worrying about all the other things that are happening and just focus on your eating. Are you eating when hungry? Are you stopping when satisfied? This is the thing that does take the longest time for us to get right. But that's why it's most important for you to work on it now. Once you get those eating habits down and you're really understanding how that works, and you're able to not overeat all the time, that's when you can then start looking at, well, how can I add workouts in? How can I add walking in? You can start focusing on other things once you are focusing on the eating habits. It's just, we're trying to say that most people will focus on exercise at the expense of eating habits. Yeah. And that is
the wrong way to do it.
Well, it's a recipe for short-term, not long-term. Yeah. And I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you're looking for long-term weight loss. And this was a lesson that we both learned, because for years we both focused on our exercise. I certainly tried to outrun my eating habits more times than I can count.
It's really, really interesting. And I think, like, if this topic specifically on exercise really interests you, as we both encourage you, go back and listen to the episode where we go into detail about our own experiences with this and how being taught as trainers, like, that's what you're kind of pushed to do, is to train people, is to get them exercising, and that's seen as the focus. But if you want to hear more about that, like, definitely go and listen to that episode, because we go into a lot more detail with that one.
Yeah, episode 3. And so the number 10 thing that we wish that someone had told us earlier is that in 99% of cases, it is not your hormones, it is not your metabolism, it is not your genetics, it is not your age or your past experiences or anything else like that is stopping you from losing weight. It is how much you eat. And I say this from a place of love, because I was there. I constantly was thinking that it was all of these outside things that were the reason that I couldn't see the results that I wanted, and what it came down to was my eating habits. It was how much I was eating. Bottom line, that is always the answer.
And so, again, I think with this point particularly, when people start to turn to hormones and they start to turn to genetics, it really does take away the focus of what we can do, what we have control over, and it tries to put the emphasis on things that are outside of our control.
Yeah. I think that's a big one. And I think it's also when you're in that place where I have been, where it feels like you're doing so many things and you're trying so many things and nothing is working, I understand how easy it can be to look for reasons why it's hard. We really, like, as we've said before, our brain looks for proof. Your brain is going to search for, okay, it feels really hard for you. It seems to be difficult for you more so than others. What could be the reason? And then we start Googling. Yeah. And then it's all over.
Dr. Google tells us that our hormones are out of whack.
Exactly. Well, and I've also been told by multiple coaches that I was working with that it was my hormones, and we tend to just believe what people tell us. Because, I mean, especially if they're a coach, because they're seen as an authority. But it's like, people don't really know that it's your hormones. They're just speculating too. And they're speculating based on the information you're giving them. And a lot of the time, it can feel like we're doing everything. But really, when you sit back and you have a look at what you're doing, there is always something more that you can be doing. And I say this from personal experience. I thought I was doing everything, but when I look back, when I sit here now with what I know now, and I look back at what I was doing, 100% I was overeating at most meals. You know, I was not listening to my hunger signals. I was eating past satisfied. I was not eating slowly. I was doing all of those things wrong, you know, and I still would jump to metabolism, hormones, genetics, all this stuff.
Well, I mean, you used to go and see someone about it, and they would give you all these supplements to take.
I've seen all the people, I've taken all the supplements. I have read all of the articles that told me how broken my metabolism and hormones were. So I get it, right? But I promise you, as soon as I dropped all that shit and realized it was a distraction, and I came back to how much am I eating, what am I thinking, and how am I talking to myself, I all of a sudden started getting results. Like magic.
Yeah.
You know,
but also not getting tied up in just focusing on all this external stuff, you know, and it was really just...
Yeah, I brought it back to what can I control, and that is how much I'm putting in my mouth.
So guys, we have delivered a massive episode for you today.
Yes, there's a lot of lessons in there.
There's a lot of things, and you know, hopefully you got some value out of it. This has taken us obviously years to learn a lot of this stuff, and
exactly.
We're still learning a lot of it too. We practice a lot of this stuff ourselves.
But that's also why we really wanted to share this stuff with you, because these are things that we wish we knew earlier. They're things that not a lot of people are talking about.
Yeah.
And they're things that I think that we all deserve to know. It certainly has changed my life, and it's changed Aaron's life to know these things. And so I hope that in some way it can help you as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much, guys, for listening, and we will both see you next time.